have a confession to make. I'm not actually that good at Geoguessr. I picked up on a lot of tips as I was learning to play the game. So yeah, I'm decent at geography, but I did learn a lot of tricks. The good news is I'm here to teach you guys exactly how you can learn them as well, so then you can become a good Geoguessr player also. There's a couple of things that you just have to know about the game before you begin. So for example, there's a lot of countries that aren't included because there's not Google Maps coverage in certain countries. Think like North Korea or Syria, South Sudan. These countries just typically don't get any coverage from Google Maps because of either privacy issues or, inaccessibility or anything like that. Knowing the countries in terms of their relevancy to Geoguessr is of paramount importance. So we'll put it up on the screen right here. Take a look at that. These are all the countries that generally appear in Geoguessr. So then there you go. You already narrowed it down by a couple. But it does get a lot tougher, and there's a lot more countries to consider. And so I'm going to teach you today 5 tips on how you can improve at Geoguessr and pretty much pin down maybe not the exact country, but down to at least a couple of countries, so then you could almost always get it right. The first tip I have for you guys is to look at the sun. I can't stress this enough. The sun is so important because if the sun is in the north, you know you're in the southern hemisphere. And if the sun is in the south, you know you're in the northern hemisphere. If the sun is in the west or east directly, you're probably on a country that's in the equator. This is something that is not super intuitive to people, and I only found this out recently as well. I was not always good at recognizing the sun and figuring out where you are, but once you get to it, it really helps. So let me show you an example of this. So here we have a country, and from first glance, you're not really too sure, right? It could be anywhere, who knows? Let's look up at the sun. So if we look at the sun, we'll see that the sun is in the south, so we know we're at a country in the northern hemisphere. So then you do a bit more digging, right? You start to see, okay, we're in an Asian country, and we could pretty much eliminate anything that's at or below the equator. So it only leaves a couple, really. So like, from my perspective, we're either in China, Japan, South Korea, Mongolia. So it's down to 4 right off the bat because I know the location of the sun. So one little thing that I got allows me to basically eliminate everything. And then okay, so in this case, I see the Mongolian flag, and so I do know it's Mongolia. But even if you don't know the flag, you already have a 25% chance of getting this right. So you click, you see, and yes, we are in Mongolia. So recognizing where the sun is can be the difference between knowing whether you're in Mexico or Brazil or say the United States or Australia. It becomes a lot easier for you to narrow down. So the next one isn't so much a trick, but it is super important to know if you are playing this game, and that is a little bit about the roads and especially the side of the road that the car drives on. And so in this case, as we can see, the cars are driving on the left side of the road. And what that means to me when I see that is it narrows it down to a handful of countries because there's not many that drive on the left side of the road. And then you also couple it with the fact that it looks to be a little more European, right? We could start to see some words. So let's call it a European country that drives on the left side of the road. I know 2 simple facts. I see English, and I know they drive on the left side of the road, and I already narrowed down to 3 countries. Now it's either in the United Kingdom, Ireland, or Malta. Coupling that with what we just learned with the sun, for example, we look at the sun here, it looks to be a little more on the equator. So we know it's likely not going to be the UK or Ireland. So it's probably Malta, and we'll see if we're right. So we just learned 2 things, and we already can get another country now. And there you go, there's Malta. So it's very important to understand what side of the road that these cars are driving on. So my third tip would be to look at the signs around you and try and pick up on some of the languages. So I can't speak any language other than English. I'm not amazing at recognizing certain languages, but from what I can see right here, I know this is an Asian language. I don't know which one. I think it's Bengali, which means it's in Bangladesh, but that's just because I've been playing a while, and I think if you see these lines across it and you think it's Hindi, it's actually going to be Bengali. I don't know. I think it is. Just knowing that, all of a sudden, just from seeing this sign, I'm able to know which country we're probably in. And so I would say we're in Bangladesh. I could be wrong, but it narrows you down to 2 countries, and so you have a 50% chance of getting it. If I hadn't seen this, and I just saw say this, I would not be in a good place. Another important thing to know is that India is not typically included in Geoguessr. There's not amazing coverage. So I really would stick with Bangladesh. So let's shoot it. Let's see if we're right here. Again, languages are of paramount importance. If you understand how to recognize languages, you're usually going to be fine. And yeah, it was Bangladesh, so cool. All right, so for my 4th tip, I think you should really start to look at the terrain and pick up on some patterns that you're seeing. So if you see anything like this and you recognize these sorts of colors, the type of roofing, for example, could be important. You look at the trees, right? So without looking at anything else, I could already tell that we're in the northern hemisphere, probably in Europe. That's my guess from this. You zoom in and you start to see some words. Kratka. Kratka. Okay, so now we're in Eastern Europe. So I know kind of where we are right now. So it's between a couple of countries. And now another thing you could look at, there's hills or mountains in the background. Only a couple of countries in Europe have this really heavy mountainous scenery. So I would maybe say we're in Slovakia, because I don't see Krylik. So I think we have to be something like Poland or Slovakia, or I would actually probably go Slovakia in this case because I see a lot of mountains behind. So let's try Slovakia. And again, this is from purely all the tips I've taught so far. There's no other sort of indicator that I'm going off of. So let's just try Slovakia. I have a feeling it is. And yeah, that's right. So my final tip would be to look for flags. And I know like at first it's kind of hard to pick up on the flags, but trust me, if you spend like an hour or two studying flags, you'll start to pick up on the ones that appear the most and stuff. And so if you look around in any city for longer than like 30 seconds, you'll probably find a flag. So like if we look around here, okay, literally there's a flag right there. We zoom in and that's the Spanish flag. You couple that with the fact that this is Spanish and we have to be in Spain, right? So we go to Spain, lock it in, and within 30 seconds, we just got this one. All right, so now we're going to tie it all together, and we're going to use all 5 tips to figure out where we are within like 30 seconds. So let's start with the sun. And now it's a little bit unclear, but it looks to be somewhere on the equator, so we know we're not super north or south. Next, look at the roads. I mean, we see a lot of motorcycles. We see they're driving on the left side. So now all of a sudden, I'm thinking East Asia. So we're probably in that region, Indonesia, Malaysia, something like that. Next, I said to look for signs. So we can see some signs here. The Bra Ibu. Okay, that doesn't tell me too much. Okay, here's a flag right here, and I know that's the Malaysian flag. Also, coupled with the shrubbery around us, looks to be, yeah, I think it's pretty much Malaysia. It fits all the criteria. So let's click Malaysia, see if we're right. And there you go. So, I mean, look, guys, it takes a little bit, but it's not the hardest thing in the world to do this. It just takes a little bit of practice. Now, every once in a while, they'll drop you right here, and the only thing you'll have is the tree. Now, I'm not at a level where I could recognize shrubbery and stuff and start to understand where we are. And so in this case, you usually have some safe bets that you can usually go to. So if you see something and you're unsure, it's probably going to be Europe. I mean, you'll pretty much distinctly know if something's in Africa. Asian culture, I mean, the trees, you could see them. They'll have longer leaves. They'll look a little more tropical and stuff. But if I see something like this, it looks like a northern hemisphere tree that I would see in probably like the Baltics. So I would maybe say like Latvia, maybe Latvia, maybe Poland. They're both good guesses. I don't really have much to work off of. So when you see people who like constantly get this, it's not because like they're amazing at the game. It's probably because they're botanists or something. But you really can't be good at recognizing these things. If you do get it, it's a clip, you throw it up, but it doesn't happen all the time. So I would say Latvia here. And it was Belgium. See, so you do get things wrong once in a while. It does. A lot of it is luck dependent where they drop you. I couldn't have possibly guessed that was Belgium. A couple of things from this video and start to implement them in your Geoguessr gameplay. I mean, it's not the hardest thing in the world, but it does require a little bit of practice. But as you can see, there's some tricks that can really get you by in this game. So just to review them really quickly, knowing the location of the sun tells you which hemisphere. Knowing stuff like what side of the road they drive on can tell you literally, can narrow it down between a few countries. Or just picking up on like the road patterns or anything like that, super big. Terrain is super big. Looking at signs and trying to pick up on different languages or just understanding the very basics. Oh, these are not English characters. This is probably Krylik. Or oh, this is probably Mandarin or Korean. Simply knowing that stuff can be within 20 seconds you could find a country. And the last thing is learning flags is a big help in this game because countries plaster them everywhere. So if you stick to that, you will be a Geoguessr pro in no time. All right, peace.